Hello and welcome back to the Game Guru's Final Fantasy Raid Guide series. My name is Sheil, and today we're going to dive into the Leviathan in the Eden Inundation, the third encounter in the new raid released in patch 5.0.1. Players might recognize Leviathan from level 50, but this time 2.0 has some meaner mechanics to deal with. Let's start out with the abilities that will be casted throughout the fight. Tidal Roar is a party-wide AoE and will be the first ability the boss uses. Your team will have to deal with this mechanic frequently. Rip Current is the fight's tank buster. The boss will mark one of the tanks with an orange marker and after a short delay, shoot a beam directly at them. Tanks will need to make sure they aren't facing the raid when marked. Leviathan will also cast Temporary Current, a massive angled AoE that consumes most of the encounter area. Your party will have to identify the safe corners and move there immediately. Drenching Pulse is the first of two boss combos. 5 AoE telegraphs will be placed under a select player, followed up by AoE circles on each player. We advise everyone to stack in the middle to drop the AoEs, then spread out around the room to avoid hitting your party. Immediately after, the boss will cast Temporary Current, so make sure you're on your way to the safe corner. The boss will then cast Tidal Wave, a room-wide knockback identified by a pillar of water on either the east or west side of the room. This will only knock you back halfway, but to be safe, standing on the same side as the pillar is your best bet. Soon after, Leviathan will cast his first Undersea Quake. Leviathan's heads will split far apart and their mouths will glow blue. The first time he uses this ability, players will need to move to the center to avoid being hit on the outer edges. If you do happen to be on the outer edges, the floor will disappear and you will fall to your death. From here, the boss will cast Crashing Pulse, which is similar to Drenching Pulse, and will telegraph 5 AoE circles under the player's feet, but this combo is followed up with a stacking mechanic. Temporary Current will happen again with limited space, so stay alert and move to the safe corners of the platform. Soon after, the platform will respawn back to full. Eventually, Leviathan will begin to cast Tsunami, a massive party-wide AoE that debuffs your team. Directly following this ability, your team will need to execute a number of maneuvers to survive. 2 players will be targeted with Surging Waters. One will expire at the start of the sequence, and the second will expire at the end. The rest of the party will need to identify who has Surging Waters, because they will be an epicenter of a knockback. The first debuff will always target a tank, so anticipate your party's movement. After the knockback, players will have to stack for Smothering Waters. After the damage goes out, players with Splashing Water debuff will have 5 seconds to move out. Identify if you have Splashing Waters right after Tsunami is casted, so you can mentally prepare it for the movement. At the same time, a player will be targeted with a circle debuff indicated by an orb over their head, and a donut AoE surrounding them. It's advised that the player with Splashing Waters move out while the player with the orb remains still. Players without Splashing Waters can stack inside the donut and wait for all the AoEs to cast. The sequence ends with the second player's Surging Waters debuff expiring, knocking back the party. This second debuff will always target a healer or DPS. The last unique ability is Maelstrom, which will spawn 3 pools that eventually grow into 3 larger pools. If you stand in these, you will receive Dropsy, a dot that lasts for 15 seconds. While these pools are active, Leviathan will cast Spinning Dive. Players will need to identify where the blue vortex is in relation to the platform and move away to avoid being one-shot. If you manage to survive these mechanics, the boss will begin recycling his old moves. Eventually, he'll cast Undersea Quake again, but this time, the heads will blast the center of the encounter area. Move to the outsides to avoid getting hit. Once on the outside, get ready to deal with Drenching Pulse, which is the same mechanic as before, but with less room. This immediately is followed up by 2 back-to-back Temporary Currents, which will force you to move from one side of the platform to the other. The platform will then respawn and you will have to recycle through the abilities again. Leviathan will use a third Undersea Quake, which is the same as the first, and blast out the sides. The next time the boss casts Tsunami, you'll have to handle the entire sequence in a limited area. Immediately following the Tsunami Sequence, the boss will use another back-to-back Temporary Current. Move to the northern corners of the platform to avoid the attack. The key to Leviathan is understanding the Tsunami Sequence. do the dance, know which debuff you have, and eventually the boss will go down. If you found this guide to be helpful, please be sure to drop us a like, and consider subscribing for more Final Fantasy content in your feed. We also invite you to join us on Discord, where you can hang out with me and the rest of the Game Gurus community. My name is Sheil, and whether it's magic, mystery, or mayhem, I'm giving you a warning, the next boss is rough.